we hire guys. That particular session, it was Jason Webb on keys. It was Tommy Harden on drums, Jeff King and Jerry McPherson on guitars, Mark Hill on bass. Mike Johnson was playing steel live, and we had Jed Hughes on acoustic. And which is interesting because Jed was a Lee call. Normally back then we were using Pat McGrath most of the time, but I don't think Pat was available but I know Lee was wanting to try Jed. And so we ended up booking Jed. And we had done a 2:00. I had a 10 a.m. demo session in the A room at Ocean Way. Think about this. I was cutting demos in the big room. In the big room. Yeah. That's how much I was working over there. And so then 2:00 we started with Lee and we cut some sides, and then we went to the 6:00. We'd always take a dinner break and then come back. Usually 6 got started at 6:30. And the 6:00 was always the loose session with the guys. We had this thing called the gobo bar. And so we had these big gobos to isolate sounds and stuff. And we'd always put like 2 of them at the back of the Ocean Way room, put a table back there and have tequila and vodka and all that. And I really didn't participate because I had to have my faculties at least until we would start the last song. I wouldn't touch anything, but the guys would start sneaking it usually about the middle of song 1. You'd see them sort of disappear and come back. That's where all the
creative music comes from.
Yeah. And so part of the way I would work with those guys is I knew that was coming. And so I would book the looser, or not book, but I would lay out the songs we were going to cut on that session. I'd put the looser songs towards the end because I knew we'd probably get a little grease on it because they'd be maybe just a little drunk. They're not like hammered,
right?
But they're a little looser, and there's a lot of jokes flying around the room.
Willing to try some new things,
100%. And so there was a lot of that going on from the get-go, and I think we cut "I Drive Your Truck" as it was the third song on the session. No, it was the second song on the session. We cut 3 on that session. And the first song took way longer than it should have. And just so your audience knows, a lot of times we'll knock out the basic tracks on a master in 45 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour. Every now and then, if it's a complicated arrangement, it might take an hour and a half to 2 hours. But I usually these days, I'll plan 2 songs a session. So I'll give myself an hour and a half a song. It gives me a little bit of leeway, but being a first-time producer, I was trying to be budget conscious. And so we had booked 3 songs for that particular session. The first one took way longer than it should have. So we didn't even get into "I Drive Your Truck." The session started at 6:30 and now it's like 7:38. It's like 8:15 and we're supposed to be done at 9 and we're only starting song 2. Well, the vice president of A&R was at the session, and he was a co-writer on the "Hard to Love" track. And we had just moved into "I Drive Your Truck," and he's at the back of the room texting me, "We going to get to "Hard to Love"?
Right.
We have to get "Hard to Love."
It's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, we got to get "Hard to Love." Got to get a cut. And I mean, I'm not stupid. He's the vice president of A&R. His name's on the song.
Right.
We have to cut that song, right? And so I ended up went out and talked to the guys. I'm like, "Hey, are you guys cool with adding an hour and a half overtime on the session?" Of course they are. They get time and a half and they love those paychecks. So that wasn't a problem. So we cut "I Drive Your Truck,"
which is a great song. It's one of the best songs. I love it,
man. And it was an absolutely magical moment. The mix that you hear on the radio or DSPs or whatever, that's what we cut live on the floor, with the exception of Lee's vocal. Lee's vocal was overdubbed later. We didn't keep any of the scratch. There are reasons why, but he's an incredible singer. He probably could have sang it down live, to be honest. But
when you said you recorded it overdub later, that was at your
at my studio. Yeah, they're in Bellevue. Yeah, my little basement studio. And
little basement studio.
Well, it was. I mean, it's 600 square feet or something with the overdub space. So
it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. It was absolutely amazing. I was blessed to have it. Um, so, and a lot of hits came out of that little bitty room. It's crazy, man. It's nuts. But so what we got on the floor made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and usually that's a good sign. At the end of a track, when I have that feeling, it's almost always been something that's done well when I get that vibe at the end of a track, which doesn't happen a lot, to be totally honest. Usually I'm like, yeah, that was one heck of a track. And, but when I get that just goosebumpy thing, which we did, and then we had to move into Hard to Love. And so now it's 9:00 and we're starting the last song of the night. And we started the song and it wasn't going so good. And I was starting to get a little nervous, and Kyle and I were looking at each other, and he's like, this doesn't feel right. And I'm like, I know, it's not feeling good at all. And I'm like, dude, you need to go talk to Lee. Cause he was throwing out all kinds of ideas, and I could tell Lee was getting nervous too. Lee is intense and creative, and he doesn't want to be a failure, and I get it. And so my gig is to support that and help him not be a failure. We want him to be success. If he's successful, we're successful. Right. And there was just something was in the air, and it was not going good. And the band was not responding to Lee's comments, and Kyle and I are trying to run interference from the control room, and it was starting to get really tense. And I was like, man, we need to just call 5. And we're in overtime, and we're going to call 5 right now. Like, we never do this in a regular session. And Kyle's like, you go talk to the band. I'm going to talk to Lee. And I was like, all right. What do you want me to say to the band? He's like, I don't know, dude. Just get him relaxed. Like, I don't know. Like, and so I go out, and they're all buddies of mine, right? I mean, and so I go out, and we're just, I'm trying to get everybody to chill, and everybody's a little concerned, like something's off. And I look up, and Lee's gone, and Kyle's in the control room, and him and Adam, my assistant, are talking, and there's this, everything seems very nonchalant all of a sudden. I don't know where the artist is. Our acoustic guitar player has disappeared, and we've got to get this song. The vice president A&R is still texting me from the back of the room, right? And so and these are all buddies of mine, and I really trust them. And I always call the guys a brain trust, because I feel like if you can get in the room with 7 world-class musicians, it's always going to be better than anything you can do yourself. Because the ideas start bouncing. It's kind of like being in the writing room with great writers. You can throw out a great idea, and they know what to do with it immediately, right? And you're off to the races. And so with those guys, I was just like, guys, I need your help. We got to get this song. And they're like, well, what do you think it is? And I said, man, I was trying to dissect it, but there was a lot going on. I said, I just feel like we're trying to make it more than it is. I said, and I looked over at Tommy. I was like, is it like the Stones? Like, is it just a simple kind of groove? And Tommy's like, I got you. And he walks over and he grabs this old 80s Yamaha blue snare drum he bought at a yard sale. Has never had the head changed. This thing's like got black all over it, right?
Black.
Yeah. And he goes over and he plops it down, and he just starts playing that groove on Hard to Love right there. And I was like, that's it. And I looked over at the guys. I'm like, Hill, I'm like, jump. And, and I'm still out on the floor, and I'm trying to get Kyle's attention. And Adam sees me, and I'm like, make it red, man.
Turn it red.
And so he rolled it, and we captured a little moment of that. And I went running in the control room, and Kyle's like, dude, I don't know what you did, but that's money. I'm like, I didn't do anything. I was just telling him it's not right. And can we try something simpler? And Tommy came up with this groove, and it feels right. And so I'm like, we got it. Where's Lee? I think he's outside getting a drink or something, right? Well, anyway, he and Jed had gone out back. Let's just say that. And so they come back in, and Jed sits down, And that hook that's on that song thing that you hear, he played it one time like that, and it was in a weird spot and it felt perfect, and he never played it like that again. So we went in and chopped it up really fast and dropped it in because it felt like that was the money riff, and it was so simple, and we had no idea that song was going to do what it did. And it's still, I think now it's his second biggest song ever in streaming numbers. It's way up in the billions of streams. It's crazy. Yeah. And that record did, I don't think it's platinum, but I think it's close, which is a lot.
The record or the song?
The album
3-time platinum.
Yeah. The song, and I think it's past that at this point. Yeah, the album itself. So so both of the I Drive Your Truck and Hard to Love came off that one session.